Hello, we're Stark.
Morning, everyone. My name is James Murphy, and I'm the Strategy and Policy Manager at Stark. This is quite a fancy title for a role that is basically just a lot of reading, constant eyebrow furrowing, and occasional navel gazing. So luckily, it suits me to a T. Stark, on the other hand, are an end-to-end energy services champion that helps businesses of all sizes in their net zero journey. We're hosting the networking area, so be sure to check it out if you haven't already. I've heard that there's a football table there, so that might entice some of you over. I'm going to talk at you, probably, about market-wide half-hourly settlement, the most fundamental change to the electricity market in 3 decades. More importantly, I'm going to tell you why you need to start thinking about its impact on your business. Just to give you a quick preview of what you've let yourself in for over the next 20 minutes. First, I will take you on a crash course in half-hourly settlement. I will then move on to an examination of Ofgem's business case for market-wide half-hourly settlement and a brief overview of the key changes. From there, we will consider whether this spells data utopia or data disaster, what the implications will be for you, and finally, some practical advice on how you can prepare for MHHS. So, let's get cracking. In a nutshell, the electricity settlement process determines whether a supplier has purchased too much or too little electricity from a generator, and then calculates payments between them accordingly. Today, this is done either half-hourly, using actual consumption data, or non-half-hourly, using an estimated profile. The approach used for a particular site depends on its size and meter capability. Roughly 300,000 medium and larger non-domestic sites are half-hourly, all of them with remote half-hourly capable advanced meters, whilst 30 million domestic and smaller non-domestic sites are non-half-hourly. Around 1 million of these also have advanced meters. About 15 million have smart, so SMETS 1 and SMETS 2 meters, and about 14 million have traditional dumb meters still. The half-hourly market wasn't always this size. Has anyone heard of P272? Some people, good. I am loath to raise the spectre of P272 at an energy manager conference, but it was the first practical step on this long road to MHHS. BSc modification P272, full title, Mandatory Half-Hourly Settlement for Profile Classes 5 to 8, snappy title, migrated 150,000 medium non-domestic sites to HHS between November 2015 and April 2017. Effectively doubling the half-hourly market to its current size. Barely sated, craving more, and without wasting any time, Ofgem launched their Electricity Settlement Reform Significant Code Review, another snappy title, in July 2017. The purpose of this was to develop a plan that would take the remaining 30 million sites to half-hourly settlement as well. Thus began the long march from the Shire of P272 to the Mordor of MHHS. That's a slightly light-hearted analogy, but I'm sure some of you would appreciate the gravity behind it. This is all quite well illustrated by the chart on this slide. I like to imagine that at the top of the MHHS column, the Eye of Sauron is looking down on us all with cold indifference. But maybe that's just me. After 4 years of groundwork, Ofgem officially made their decision to progress with MHHS in April 2021 and published a 4-year program plan for industry to get it done. This is broken down into a 2-year design-build-test phase, a 1-year qualification phase, and a 1-year migration phase, with target implementation in October 2025. So, where we had 18 months to migrate 150,000 meters under P272, which never really finished, by the way, we have just 12 months for 30 million under MHHS. Oh dear. The Lord of the Rings analogy now seems a bit more fitting, possibly. Why would Ofgem subject us all to such a cruel and unusual punishment? Well, it turns out that they do have quite a lot of good reasons, about 4.5 billion of them. Their full business case for MHHS, which took 3 years to complete, identifies net benefits of 1.5 to 4.5 billion. That range is dependent upon the uptake of something called load shifting. This is when, in response to price signals, a consumer shifts their demand from a peak period to an off-peak one. Ofgem's theory is that by using actual half-hourly data in settlement, suppliers will be exposed to the true cost of providing electricity to their customers throughout the day, and thus be incentivized to help them load shift. Ofgems see widespread load shifting as a key enabler of net zero and a smart, flexible energy system that has lower costs overall. Reduced demand at peak periods would result in less requirements for additional generation and network reinforcement, whilst more flexible use of energy will allow us to harness intermittent renewable generation better. Both of these are important strategic goals when considered in the context of a significant projected increase in demand over the next decade, mainly from EV charge points and heat pumps, etc. This is all the theory anyway. Unfortunately, it's all highly sensitive to consumer behavior change, which we all know is a very difficult barrier to overcome. And you may notice that I haven't really talked about the costs. And this is because Ofgem's estimate of 500 million was based on an incomplete design, and so is basically meaningless and is very susceptible to upward revision. Either way, there is a lot riding on MHHS, as multiple other energy policies rely on it. And indeed, a lot of future electricity policy will probably build on it. I've put some examples in the box on the right here. The smart metering rollout, the smart systems and flexibility plan, electricity network charging review, energy data and digitalization, all of these rely on MHHS in some way. Hopefully the last two slides have helped you understand how we got here and some of the motivations for embarking on this adventure. This is the Target Operating Model, or TOM for MHHS. Now please, take care not to stare directly at it for too long. Otherwise it will invade your dreams, just like it has mine. You have been warned. It is quite a confusing diagram for the uninitiated, so I'll try and keep this explanation simple and high level. The market will no longer be segmented by settlement type, non-half-hourly or half-hourly. Instead, it will be segmented by meter type. A smart segment, SMETS 1 and SMETS 2 meters, an advanced segment, so AMR advanced meters, and an unmetered segment. For the purpose of this talk, we're going to forget that unmetered exists. Both of the meter segments will be supported by a competitive market for metering services and data services. These are an evolution of the existing meter operator and data collector roles we have today, with the exception of the smart data service, which is an entirely new role created for MHHS. And this closely mirrors the existing half-hourly data collector role, but has an additional component to interface with the Data Communications Company, the DCC, which is the centralized monopoly that supports data retrieval from SMETS meters. More on this later. Perhaps most fundamental is an increased tendency towards centralization. Exxon, who run the central settlement services, receiving meter-level half-hourly data directly and then performing aggregation themselves. This is in contrast to today, where they receive pre-aggregated data from data aggregators. A competitive service that exists today will be removed from the market under MHHS, which is ironic considering Ofgem's normal position on competition. There is also a new central load shaping service, which will continue to create profiles like those that are used in non-half-hourly settlement today for any remaining traditional meters and domestic consumers who opt out to be pseudo half-hourly settled. Changes to the settlement timetable will also mean that everything has to be done faster with less opportunity for correction later. This will hopefully drive us all to get it right first time more often, but I guess we'll see. In summary, everything is changing, but in some areas, we still cling to a legacy mindset, particularly around the use of profiling. What does this all mean from a data perspective? We all know that data can have an incredible transformative effect on a business, and the electricity settlement market is no exception. This influx of actual half-hourly data should enable more accurate forecasting of demand, purchasing of energy, and ultimately less imbalance in settlement. This is big data being harnessed by the industry to optimize process and reduce costs. It's easy to see how this could be described as data utopia. Exxon, having access to a lot more granular data than ever before, could bring benefits around market monitoring, modeling, and trend analysis. This can be used to make better informed decisions around market design and performance assurance. Moreover, defects with the current arrangements will be designed out, which should remove some of the common headaches of managing a metering estate today, whilst also improving the quality of both consumption and standing data. From a consumer perspective, access to half-hourly data from all advanced and SMETS meters will bring with it significant opportunities for insight, energy savings, business optimization, and carbon reduction. Those that engage with this data will be able to fast-track their journey to net zero. Building on this, the more accurate allocation of costs should drive a wave of half-hourly enabled innovation, not just from suppliers, that will benefit consumers through new products and services. Through the analysis of half-hourly consumption data, there is also the opportunity for these products and services to be much more tailored to your specific needs than they are today. And this might be exactly what we need in response to the enduring energy crisis. There is also the matter of flexibility services. For example, demand-side response. Flexibility services require a site to be half-hourly settled and are today reserved for the largest non-domestic sites. MHHS will make flexibility services viable to a much wider audience, and this could become a potential revenue stream for a lot of smaller businesses. Installation of low-carbon technologies like charge points, heat pumps, and battery storage will also increase viability for flexibility services. That all sounds pretty great. I may have just convinced myself that this is going to be data utopia. Now, for the flip side, whilst I'd never say there is such a thing as too much data in and of itself, there is such a thing as poor implementation and planning and over-encumbrance. Well, this is where the potential for disaster lurks. There is, at the heart of this program and the industry at large, a monolithic monopoly owned by Capita called the DCC. Their role, as I mentioned before, in MHHS will be to support data retrieval from SMETS meters. Unfortunately, the early indications of their capability in that regard are concerning. There are around 50,000 SMETS meters that are currently settled half-hourly on an elective basis, and the performance of this cohort suggests that the DCC's data delivery is not up to scratch. They themselves have acknowledged that there is not sufficient capacity in the system today to support MHHS, and it is proving ruinously expensive just to get an estimate of the costs needed to increase it. Ofgem's 4.5 billion in benefits suddenly feel threatened. Moreover, a single point of failure for 20 million meters sounds like an extremely high risk to settlement overall. And this is ironic considering we're trying to improve settlement here. Even more concerning, I've heard it said in numerous work groups that SMETS meters were never designed for half-hourly settlement, and their accuracy and robustness for daily data collection is not assured. This sounds ridiculous when you consider that the smart meter rollout benefits case relied heavily on load shifting and eventual implementation of MHHS itself. To me, this all sounds a bit like a car crash waiting to happen, for the smart segment at least. There is one final point on the DCC before I finish this mini rant. Apologies. The architecture of the DCC means that a supplier request for data could be prioritized over a request from another user group. The result could be a stifling of innovation as suppliers become gatekeepers to consumption data from SMETS meters. This sounds decidedly dystopian to me and could slow down progress to net zero. Okay, DCC rant over. I had to get it in there somewhere. There are other risks that flirt with disaster as well. The benefits case only stacks up if actual half-hourly data is maximized. But as we saw earlier, the TOM leaves the door open for legacy processes like profiling to remain. This is to cater for the millions of traditional meters that will remain in the market and any domestic consumers that opt out. If the smart meter rollout doesn't ramp up and consumer engagement around MHHS is mismanaged, we run the risk of spending all this time, money, and effort implementing MHHS in name only, with the majority of the market continuing to be settled on an estimated profile. A robust performance assurance framework needs to be in place to incentivize the highest delivery of actual data as possible. And this is a piece of the MHH puzzle that is currently missing and needs to be addressed ASAP. There's also the fact that all market participants, so suppliers, agents, distributors, Elexon Central Services, are all changing their systems at once. I don't think that's ever happened, and that creates a lot of implementation risk. I'm thinking data migration failures, systemic data quality issues, failed integrations, interoperability issues between different participants. Throw on top of this a period of data cleansing in the lead up to MHHS, and it sounds even more like a mess. As I alluded to at the beginning of the talk, the migration timeframe for MHHS is extremely challenging. Just 12 months for 30 million meters. And there's even talk of reducing this to 9 months. This does not provide sufficient contingency for issues with migration and could lead to suboptimal outcomes. For instance, half-complete migrations, meters stuck in limbo between old world and new world, double counting in settlement, etc. This will be terrible for consumer experience and very difficult to unpick from a data perspective. And it's something quite easy to mitigate by just giving ourselves more time. Contrary to how it sounds, I do personally believe that data utopia is possible under MHHS. However, it's going to take an unprecedented amount of coordination and cooperation to avoid disaster. I sincerely hope that we, as an industry, can rise to the challenge. I promise I didn't steal that line from COP. What does it all mean for you as business energy users? Unfortunately, the headlines are change, disruption, and confusion. New contracts will be required for both supply and agent services, if this is something that you contract for directly already. You'll also notice changes to your bills. Non-commodity costs are recovered differently under half-hourly settlement and will be based on actual data rather than estimated data. There's also the very real risk of disruption to your metering and data experience as the market transitions to the new arrangements. You're also likely to see stronger pressure or signals from your supplier to shift load throughout the day and an increased focus on when you use energy rather than just how much. This may be accompanied by increased marketing to take up additional products and services, but as I mentioned before, this may well be to your benefit. There is also a whole raft of new terminology and processes for you to understand. Just when you thought you knew what every acronym in this industry means, it's all about to change. So, good luck. With all of that in mind, what can you do to prepare? Well, my advice would be consolidate your metering estate into one segment. Smart or advanced, SMETS or AMR. It may be clear to you which one of those I would recommend. If you want to avoid monopoly and DCC, go for AMR. If you want a tried and tested half-hourly metering platform, go for AMR and advanced meters. You have a right to choose a solution that works best for you, so inform yourself and use it. Next would be review the health of your portfolio. Identify any remaining traditional meters and get them exchanged. At the same time, understand the proportion of advanced and smart meters in your portfolio that don't have working remote comms and put in place a plan to get them fixed. When we get closer to the migration phase, engage with your distributor in order to agree a maximum import capacity before you become half-hourly settled. Otherwise, you will be put onto a default one that may not be appropriate for your site and you could end up overpaying. Partner with a data specialist to help you maximize the benefits from the increased granular data that you'll be accessing. Again, the TOM enshrines your right to choose your own metering and data partner. Make sure you use it. Consider whether and how you can amend your business operations or working hours to best take advantage of time of use tariffs and flexibility services. Swat up and revise the new terminology and processes so that you know what is being talked about and no one can take advantage of your lack of understanding. And finally, consider how MHHS can fit into your own net zero plan. Okay, that's it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Stunned silence, it looks like.